If you're struggling to lose weight, you've probably heard about weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound, and you might be wondering if they're right for you. Meet PlushCare, a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. If you qualify, they can safely prescribe you medication from the comfort of your own home. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weightloss. That's plushcare.com/weightloss. plushcare.com/weightloss.
Growing up, Brittany Powell spent her free time on the basketball court. Whether she was perfecting her shooting form or spending all weekend at a tournament, basketball was her sole focus. When she started having tingling and numbness in her arms, the doctors dismissed it as growing pains. But as the symptoms persisted, Powell wondered if it was truly being caused by a growth spurt.
And then out of nowhere, my right arm stopped working. Like I couldn't use it, and I was heavily using my left hand. So yeah, we had to get several x-rays done. They couldn't find anything wrong. They misdiagnosed me with scoliosis. But then I started losing function in the lower half of my body. And so now I wasn't able to walk. I was unable to stand. I couldn't really move.
At 12 years old, Powell underwent months of blood tests, x-rays, and MRIs before doctors finally found a mass on her spinal cord. Though it was only the size of a thumbnail, it had caused nerve damage in her arms and legs.
I had 6 sets of spinal surgeries, and they were going from the front and the back, and the tumor would grow back each time more aggressively. And I even went through chemotherapy, and the tumor grew back as well.
All 6 surgeries were in the span of a year. After the chemotherapy hadn't worked, Powell was just 13 years old when doctors gave her a death date.
The doctors stated that I only had 3 months to live because the tumor growth was so aggressive and the rate in which it was growing was just too much. And the fact that I was losing mobility in my arms and my legs was very significant.
Fortunately, Powell's parents refused to accept the diagnosis. Her mom immediately began researching clinical trials that Powell would be a good fit for.
If there's one thing about that lady, she does not take no for an answer. So you tell her something and she will disapprove real quick. And she found several support groups, several cancer support groups online, and they were having this extreme success rate with this clinical trial called denosumab.
They reached out to the scientists to see if Powell could get into the clinical trial. But while she was physically a good candidate, the required monthly trips to receive the medication was a huge financial hurdle.
At this time, my mom is out of work. She's been out of work for about a year. She was my main provider, and we had a home that was going underwater. Like, we're in the process of losing our home and our livelihood of what we know. Like, my mom's a single parent, so it was really, really hard.
But with Powell's life hanging in the balance, they couldn't turn down this opportunity. Luckily, the researchers referred them to Lazarex Cancer Foundation. It's a nonprofit that helps increase access to clinical trials for cancer patients. Dana Dornsife is the founder and chief mission and strategy officer for the foundation. She says Lazarex was created from her personal experience of hunting for cancer trials.
My youngest sister's husband, Mike, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was given a 0.5% chance of survival. So we knew that he wouldn't get different results if he did the same thing that other pancreatic cancer patients were doing. And so they asked me to look into clinical trials. And I thought, well, how hard could that be?
Turns out it's extremely difficult. 5 weeks later, Dornsife emerged with a few options that her brother-in-law may have qualified for, and a heavy frustration for the convoluted process. ClinicalTrials.gov has information for ongoing studies around the world, but Dornsife says decoding the medical jargon was almost impossible.
It's the way that information is not available, not presented in lay terms. And all clinical trials are registered on clinicaltrials.gov, but you also have to have a medical degree in order to be able to read through the protocols. I'd read 3 sentences and look up 10 words, and it was just crazy.
Mike ended up finding a trial that helped extend his life, but Dornsife realized that was only because he had a support system who dedicated endless time and resources to get there. Not many cancer patients can say they have the same. This sparked a fire in her to create Lazarex, which takes so much of the burden off the patient, including clinical trial navigation.
chances are that your oncologist or the office where you're being seen is not involved in clinical trials. So they're not going to talk about clinical trials to their patients, because if they do, then they become responsible. So we encourage the medical community to refer patients to us. We'll do the heavy lifting. They can call us, and our team, who is trained, will do all of that for them. They interview the patient. They take into consideration what their diagnosis is, their treatment history, their physical capacity to travel, because usually clinical trials are not in your backyard.
And some patients need a travel companion or have young kids that need to be taken care of, factors that are often huge obstacles.
If you're faced with having to travel to get to a clinical trial and making a commitment for the next 12 months that you're going to travel to a clinical trial site 2 or 3 times a month at a cost of $400 or $500 potentially per month that you don't have, you're not going to go. And you start making decisions around what is best for my family. And do I want to spend what little I have left, if any, on a chance that this trial may help me? Or do I want to put my family in a better financial position by not going?
Which is partly why cancer trial participation is so low. In fact, recent research in the journal Cancer estimates that only 2 to 8% of cancer patients enroll. A 2019 study in the Journal of Clinical Oncology reveals that nearly half of cancer trials aren't able to find enough participants to complete the research. This leads to small sample sizes that can't provide valid results.
Too many patients go to their grave never having known that they could participate. And so that's where you see cumulatively all of these things leading to 5 or 7% of people who could participate in trials actually do. And of that 5 or 7%, only a very small percentage come from our communities of color. That creates a scientific problem for the development of drugs that work for everyone in our community, right? That's why we're so focused on improving not just enrollment, but diversity of clinical trial participants.
But the burden can't be fully shouldered by the patients and their families. Dornsife says there's a lot that can be done on the research side to improve the process.
There's a disconnect with researchers, right? They think, oh no, we just do research. We don't support patients. Well, the thing is that if you are doing research and you're developing a investigational agent that's going to become part of a clinical trial, you need patients. And that drug is going to go nowhere if you don't have adequate enrollment, right? And so we need to reformulate how we think and include patient support as part of that research process. Because ultimately, if a new drug or a new treatment doesn't get to patients, what's the point?
At Evernorth Health Services, we believe costs shouldn't get in the way of life-changing care, and we're doing everything in our power to make it possible. Behavioral health solutions that also keep your projections at their best? It's possible. Pharmacy benefits that benefit your bottom line? It's possible. Complex specialty care that cares about your ROI? It's possible. Because we're already doing it. All while saving businesses billions. That's Wonder made possible. Learn more at evernorth.com/wonder.
Dornsife thinks that a successful trial needs the patient perspective at many more parts in the process than just being the guinea pigs. Last year, we reported on Lupus ABC, a public-private partnership with the FDA that brought together patients and researchers to advance treatment together. This type of collaboration may be just what cancer trial research needs. Dornsife says that listening to patients could help scientists understand what drugs will be effective. For example, many patients aren't eligible to participate because they have a secondary condition like heart disease.
It makes sense to a certain degree because as a researcher, you want the cream of the crop because you want your drug to work, right? And you want to get approval and get to market. But unfortunately, that's not how the real world works.
A recent paper published in Cancer Research estimates that 1/3 of all cancer patients have at least one comorbidity. That number can increase depending on the specific cancer diagnosis. So broadening the scope of accepted patients would help figure out how these drugs interact with other health issues, as well as increase participation rates. However, the financial burden still remains a main obstacle. LazarX and similar organizations do their best to fill the gap, but without any efforts from the research side to increase accessibility, there may always be too many patients without the means to travel and participate in life-saving trials.
In October, we had to put a hold on accepting new applications because we were literally spending twice what we had budgeted, which was substantial. We had budgeted almost $2.5 million a year for just reimbursement, and we were almost doubling that. So I just need people to understand that we are here to help, but we can only help if we have dollars to do it with. And we are a public charity. We are completely dependent on donations to our organization. We have very, very low overhead, 10%. And we have a benefactor who covers almost all, if not all, of our facilities and administration. So literally, every dollar someone gives to us goes to help a patient.
For Powell, this support got her treatment that not only kept her alive past her doctor's 3-month estimate, but actually improved her health.
I started gaining weight properly. I was holding down food. I wasn't as nauseous. I was in a brace at the time. So I had a brace that was from the middle of my abdomen all the way up to my neck just to hold my spine stable. And that was around the time I was able to get out of my brace that I'd been in for like a year or so.
After a year of surgeries, chemotherapy, and being given a deadline on life, Powell was finally cancer-free.
It was just one of those things where it was a miracle. And I remember being cancer-free in late summer, and me and my family basically threw a mini party in my house, and we just kind of just had a day of just being like thankful and just enjoying each other's company and like thanking God for allowing us to be here.
You can find more information about LazarX, Brittany Powell, Dana Dornsife, and all of our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. I'm Elizabeth Westfield.